Hey everybody, Terry Wells Brown here, back with the Women of Wine Country show, and I am super excited today. I have a very special guest, Miss Kimberly Warmsley, and I had tried to get her on last week, but life happened, and so she was so kind to reschedule with me. But she is a super amazing woman who is a dynamo in our communities, and I am so thrilled to just kind of let her tell me about herself. She has a radio show at the radio station that I'm at, Live with Kimberly, so if you ever get a chance, tune in and see her. She is amazing. So hi, Kimberly. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me, Terry. I really appreciate you, and I think that this conversation is long overdue. I know that when we met, we kind of instantly connected just about life and this topic called mental wellness or mental health, emotional distress, and the need to really be transparent and talk about it. So I'm here for it, and I'm ready to talk.
And I think it couldn't come in a better time right now. I think talking about, I have just said to a whole group of people that our mental and emotional health is as or almost more important than our physical health.
Absolutely. And, I like to think of it as our mental wellness and our mental health pretty much dictates how we feel, how we behave, how we act, how we react. It really is the roadmap in life. And, again, I know that we kind of had side conversations about how emotional distress is at its height. So absolutely, I agree 100%.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and share with the viewers that discussion, because I think it's an important one.
So basically, again, I'm really a champion in this field in the sense of allowing people to understand that it's okay not to be okay. I think that there is so much stigma about when people want to seek help and or access opportunities to process their feelings. And so with that being said, I've really spearheaded conversations about just wellness. One of the things that I've been really concerned about within the last 60 days is the stay-at-home order, in the sense that, number one, there's a large population of people here in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our countries that are affected by mental health, whether it's depression or anxiety or post-traumatic stress disorder. Mental health is very much so alive in the community, in the sense that people are affected, they're impacted.
Yeah.
And so I think that what you and I have been discussing kind of on the back doors off the scene is the fact that COVID-19 has really kind of hindered people. And so what we're seeing now is a rise in mental health, not only with people who had already or previously been diagnosed, but now we're seeing an influx of people who are either anticipating the worst of outcomes of either being affected by COVID-19 and or really deeply concerned that a loved one is going to be affected by COVID-19. And
right.
So anxiety is through the roof. And I think I shared with you before, I did a blog on my Facebook business page about anxiety. That blog was shared nearly 12,000 times. Never liked, and let's face it, there's stigma with mental health. So I did anticipate I wasn't going to get 100 comments about it. However, I can see how many people shared the page or shared the post, and I was blown away. And with that being said, let me just kind of break down the anxiety component that I'm talking about, and what to look at or what to look for if you think you are having anxiety related features, which includes excessive worrying, anticipating the worst, negative thoughts, feeling fatigue, sleeplessness, not being able to sleep at night, are some of the symptoms of anxiety. And if you go on social media and, you know, even tap in or check in with friends, you'll find that a lot of people are experiencing that right now. You know, the unknown of COVID-19, the impact of jobs, the loss of our young youth who didn't have like the traditional graduation or promotion celebrations. I mean, you name it, there's a lot going on. And so I think that is very important to get this information out about what people may or may not be feeling and what they can do in order to kind of relieve some of that stress.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. And why don't you let the viewers know kind of who you are, what your business is, and so that they understand your level of professionalism and that you speak with authority.
Thank you very much for that. So I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field of mental health or emotional wellness probably for the last 17 years. I'm also a student at University of Southern California. I'm getting my PhD in social work and transformative policies. So I've written ordinances in regards to the benefits of communities embracing and supporting people who have been affected by mental health. I have a lot of extensive experiences with trauma in particular. Before we started recording, I mentioned my father and his struggles with PTSD and war and or combat exposure. So I've dealt with emotional distress and mental health for nearly 20 years, working as a therapist in the community. And I also have my own private practice in Stockton. So I do see people professionally, and this is what I do every day. On top of my work with different emergency departments like St. Joseph's, UC Davis in Sacramento, and the County General Hospital. So I've done this work for a very, very long time.
Right. And so what you're seeing now is an uptake, and I'm sure Memorial Day, we discussed a lot of vets, or Memorial Day is very hard, and we have a very high population of wartime combat vets right now because of the theaters of war we've been in for decades, quite frankly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and for them, not only did we just have Memorial Day go by, which is very difficult for many of them. Most combat vets know somebody who they served with that passed. Not only that, we have the pandemic, which is isolating everybody, you know, so a lot of times the groups that they might have joined aren't going to be available to them. And so there's a whole slew of circumstances that are causing probably people who would normally go day to day to day and be okay, and maybe on the fringe sometimes, just push them over the edge. Financial stress, isolation, not knowing how you're going to get back to your job, if you're going to have a job, what are you going to do with your kids when the job comes back? You know, I mean, I'm sure you're seeing a lot.
Absolutely. And even with the kids, so this is a very interesting pattern that I noted. So keep in mind that class of 2020 were born in 2011. So these kids were born into a national pandemic. So a lot of them were born in the year that 9/11 happened. In fact, probably about 90%. So these kids were born into this national crisis, and now they're graduating in this global pandemic. And it is very heartfelt. You know, I have a senior myself. So as a mom, I've experienced this firsthand, where kids are feeling, and as they should, you know, I've done all this work and I don't have a graduation, a prom, you know, I didn't have an opportunity to say goodbye to my teachers and my friends. And so they do have a right to feel resentful. I think that for me personally, not only as a mom, but as a professional, I've encouraged parents to be an active listener. And everybody has their opinion, and that's fine. And we were all born with it. But I think in this case, a lot of what people need is that open ear to validate their feelings, to allow them to express themselves, to help guide them and ground them. Because I know a lot of kids who have given up and like, I don't want to go to college. I don't want to talk about it. I'm just done. They
Oh,
shouldn't feel that way. Yeah,
yeah.
just totally like, why try? I've, gotten 3.75s. I don't get to go to college and have like that traditional dorm life, traditional school life, because a lot of the schools are now going virtually.
I know.
So that's a whole nother, gamut of learning how to learn in a Zoom conference or a Zoom meeting. Like it's
It's a
very
learning curve.
compelling for
Yeah.
everyone.
And
And
I
then
think
like,
it's really important to talk a little bit about you saying, a parent to listen to your seniors as they're talking about that. I found a little bit in a couple of groups that I manage that there were a lot of, parents of seniors that were kind of, saying this sucks for my kid. And some people were trying to shut them down, and it's a graduation, who cares? And I feel like there's a platform. It's like, to them, it's important. To them, that's a big deal. And it's like, it's not one or the other. We can still be upset about the pandemic and be upset for the senior who didn't get to graduate. It can all happen simultaneously. It doesn't have to be only one way. I think we've kind of, some people, and I don't know, is that a comfort thing that some people fall into one way of thinking and they're upset about anything else? I don't understand kind of that dynamic.
Sometimes one of my best supervisors of all times used to tell me to always be a tree and not a rock, because when you're a rock, you can't grow anymore, and a tree can continue to grow like 2 lifetimes. And I think that sometimes we project our own personal issues onto others. And what you have gone through back in your day is totally different from now. And I think that one of the things that I have really emphasized to parents and people in community is that when we shut kids down, I'm not saying someone did that like intentionally. I think it was just
Yeah.
a matter of like not being educated and informed. That when you're saying stuff like this to our kids, you're shutting them down. And you're losing out on such a vital piece of parenting or mentoring or guiding or being an aunt or uncle or a cousin. And that's the opportunity to build bonding and trust and compassion, And I think that just listening, when you listen to people when they cry out, there's just such a better outcome. A lot of times this is how we prevent suicide. This is how we prevent people, their deteriorating self-esteem or self-confidence, is listening and validating. They have a right to feel that way. So when we're coming at them like, well, there's other things that you should be worried about, or it's not all that bad. Yeah, it is. Imagine something being taken away from you that you worked hard for. This is how people give up. And so it's really important that we support our youth more now than ever.
So your advice to parents would be to allow them to moan and groan and get it out and talk about it, and don't try to shut it down or quiet their, let them kind of have their voice.
Absolutely. And what you will find that, when your kids get older and they become an adults, guess what? They're going to be more inclined to confide in you because they know that you're going to be a listener and you're going to validate their feelings.
That's great advice. That is really good advice.
And I really want to kind of go the extra mile in the listening, and listen, Terry, we're all human, so I'm not saying I'm like the world's best mom, okay? I'm not here to say that. I've had to learn some things as well. But when you listen to them, that also means that you listen to them at 100% and not shut them down or disvalue their opinion, or, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I find that is some of the hardest battles as parents, is like dismissing what they're feeling. Even if your own personal opinion is that they're, you're doing too much, or come on now, don't think about it that way. Like, really listen. You'll be amazed.
Sometimes it's like you need to not try to fix it and just let them talk to you about it.
Right. Because you never know their direction of where they're going. But even, as you know, as you heard earlier, I have a 5-year-old, and I was amazed what he had to say about COVID-19 and what his thoughts were at 5. And I'm just like, you know what? Kids need to be free thinkers. Of course, there's a fine line, and, there may be some redirect in that way. But talking is the most inexpensive thing that we can do right now. It's free, and we have time to do that.
Yeah. So what advice would you have for people who have senior citizens? So we moved my mother-in-law, who's 81 years old, out from Wisconsin to our home in November. And we were so excited because we're like, oh, it's going to be great. She's finally here. She needs to be around her family. She's 81. She's starting to have some issues. And then the pandemic happened. And I have to tell you, it's been very hard on her because she's afraid. She's afraid to go out, but now she's isolated first, and she's moved away from all of her friends. So she's stuck in the house with her busy family. And so what advice would you have for those of us who have seniors that we're trying to watch after? And, I'm very concerned about isolation.
I am too. And I think that it's hard for our seniors because we're our generation, our general is kind of already in technical stuff. So we can hop on a Zoom and hop on, text messaging. And a lot of our seniors don't have that affordability because they're not inclined to, this new norm. I've been encouraging people, and this is something that me and my kids do. Because I met a woman in a retirement home, and she's 82 and she doesn't get out. And I just met her by doing some deliveries for this chic pantry. And I just made a friendship with her, and I've had my kids send her postcards, doing some letter writing. And I just remember as a child, I used to do that. Like, I used to write letters and make phone calls to aunts and uncles in other states. And I think that it's time for our communities to really pull together, especially for our senior population. They deserve it. But start doing letter writings and having like nieces and cousins write letters. Your mom and other seniors can write them back. I think the postmaster would appreciate that. But start sending letters and postcards.
So when the shutdown first happened, and the kids were sent home and the retirement centers were locked down, I had suggested on social media, which always gets me in trouble, maybe we could have the children write letters and send them to the senior citizen centers. Well, then it was like, oh yeah, send infected germs right into the senior citizen. So sometimes the best laid plans. I don't know whatever happened. I got my butt kicked so hard I just took the post down. But so do we think now that it would be safe to do something like that and encourage children to do that?
Well, the orders are being lifted, so we're gradually like transitioning back. I think that the number one thing, and of course, I'm working on the front line with a lot of medical doctors, and we talk about the universal precautions and like making sure that we're wiping down the surfaces and we're, washing our hands. So if we're doing this with our kids, of course, we're gonna follow like the universal basic foundation and elements that CDC has suggested. But I love that idea. I mean, there's no 100% guarantee. There's no 100% guarantee here, Terry. But if we're doing our best to prevent it, then let's do our best to prevent it. I've loved. Have you been noticing the drive-bys that people have been doing in the parade?
Yeah, we have it a lot in our community. We're a smaller community here, so it's a little bit easier to organize, I think. But we had a couple of seniors, so we did drive-bys. We had sidewalk chalk, and we had a local person who did a drone and then put a video together of all the kids' sidewalk chalk art.
I love it.
So we've done, and then like Easter, we had eggs. The kids would color eggs and put them in the windows, and then parents would drive around to the houses where the eggs were. We've done a lot of stuff like that. But I think smaller communities, it's a little easier to organize that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is. But I always say that like one act of kindness kind of can create a whole different set of behaviors.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that whole Starbucks, and when you're in the drive through and you're buying the person in front of you meal. Like, I love stuff like that. I think
Me too.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that we need to be a culture of giving, a culture of empathy. And these are characteristics that kind of have gotten shuffled in our busy lives. And to some extent, I think COVID has helped us reframe how we treat one another to some extent.
I would agree, yes.
There's a lot of people who are volunteering, a lot of people who are, working to support one another. This is great. I hope that the energy continues. But now is the time to really be supportive as much as you can. Even like having cousins and aunts call and just do check-ins and wellness checks, because it's important. And our seniors should be protected. They're a wealth of wisdom. They're a wealth of history for us. So we need to do what we need to do in order to make sure that they do feel validated and they do feel supported.
Yeah, I think the fact that I'm not comfortable with the fact that we allow our people to age and then we stick them in a home to die. Like, that's not something that I wanted for my mother, which didn't happen. And I don't want it for my mother-in-law. And I would certainly hope it wasn't done to me. So there's just a level of compassion and loyalty that I hope that this brings us back to with each other. I mean, in the end, in the end, our relationships are all we really have,
And those memories. And so, you don't want to ingrain that. And you made a good point too, when we're talking about like generations. So when your kids and your family see how you treated your mother, then naturally they're going to know and understand how they should treat you. You know what I mean? So we're creating this cycle of empathy and support and family. And that starts with us as individuals. And so to some extent, yes, COVID has caused a lot, and there's been a lot of tragedies and fatalities. But on a brighter end, I think that neighbors have gone back to being neighbors.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but I've been cooking so much these days. I'm like, woohoo.
I didn't know I was a stress baker. Come to find out, when the times get tough, Terry's in the kitchen baking up a pie. Let me tell you.
I saw that cherry pie you was making too the other day.
I don't know what happened. That's what my fallback was. I mean, I've never been through this kind of stress before since 9/11, right? I mean, the downturn was a different kind of stress. I got to work at the downturn, but I was never been isolated in my home before. And all I could do was bake. I bake and froze. My freezer is stuffed full. I don't know what my deal is, but apparently I become a pioneer type woman and I start baking. Who knew? Because I don't really like to cook.
I love it. But you bring up a good point about how we deal with our stress. So some of us are cooking, some of us are cleaning. I've seen a lot of people start gardens. I was really, really really, really impressed to see how many people have started gardening.
Yeah.
I've seen people pruning fruits and vegetables and making jams. Like that's impressive. I grew up on a 5-acre farm, so when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I'm channeling my inner farm girl. So
There you go.
no,
That's right.
I haven't done any gelling or fruit preserves, but seeing that kind of triggered me like, well, maybe I should go check out some mason jars. Great coping skills, right? Because
They
we do want
are.
to, yeah, we want to channel all this energy in a positive way.
Yes. Well, and I have to say another good thing that came from the pandemic, and I would never be somebody who would say the pandemic was good, but I
Right.
am also somebody who will always look for the good thing in everything that happens. And so for us locally, again, we're a smaller community, and so we have a little bit more ability to organize effectively. We started a fruit and veggie exchange on a Facebook group here, and we started incorporating canning and preserving and that kind of stuff. And the San Joaquin County Preserves Group, which is a government organization, got involved, and now they're holding classes for us virtually. So
Wow.
so we're all we're a little bit more rural out here in Woodbridge. A lot of us have already had gardens and already had fruit trees and already had some of these things, but now we've worked out a network for the community to exchange fruits and vegetables with each other, which we're doing like daily. You see people meeting up to exchange fruits and vegetables, and they're teaching us now how to preserve. So I think it serves a couple of things. It gets the group, it gets neighbors together and talking again, like you had said, is so important. It also makes us feel like we're doing something productive, because we never know when we're going to go to the store and there's not going to be any more jelly, because this time it was toilet paper, but next time it might be jelly.
So true.
and it gives us something to do to relieve stress.
Right. And think about the recipes that you're leaving, the steps that you're taking. Like I started now like really teaching my daughter about like secret, like my grandmother's peach cobbler recipes. Like we're preserving memories that will be forever embedded in our kids. I absolutely love it. I think it's wonderful. Talk about turning lemons to lemonade.
Amen. Amen. That's the way to do it. Well, and I grew up in the South on a military base, and that was kind of like, when all of the men would go out, because it was, let's face it, it was the 60s and 70s. The men would go off to whatever they were doing, and the wives would get together. And I remember being in I don't remember what my mom used to call it, but it was a name, not the commissary, but it was some other name, where the women would get together and they would plot out the things they were going to do. And it took me back a little bit to that time, kind of how our community organized. And so, and it was always around food.
Right.
Food is such an important staple for us. So I want to, we're kind of getting through, and this is such a great discussion. I would love to have you back on, Ashley, to talk more about this and to kind of,
Absolutely.
because you're such a wealth of information. But I want to talk a little bit more about you. And you've got a campaign you're on right now, don't you?
Oh, yes, I do. So I am actually running for Stockton City Council in District 6, which is dear to my heart too, because this is where I grew up. And interestingly, I've lived in almost every area of the district, so I know it very well. So I'm just excited, I'm this, a girl who grew up in South Stockton. Like I said, grew up in a kind of a farm area, a very rural area with my parents and my grandparents. And really, I mean, when I say pulled myself up. And as you can see, I think it was probably because my dad is 100% disabled veteran. So I was able to really maximize that experience, grab some degrees, got into the mental health field, been a social worker, and just really have seen the difficulties that people have faced in my community. And you know what? The opportunity came up and I said, why not? Why not? Dropped my name in the hat and ended up winning a seat to move on to the November primaries at 46% of the vote. So
Wow.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm excited.
So now where is District 6? Is South Stockton District 6 then?
So we are on the B. We start on B Street by the fairgrounds. So
Okay.
I grew up near the fairgrounds, so I got to see all those horses and pigs and peach cobbler eating contest, all the way to Little John Creek, near the airport, and here in Western Ranch where I currently live with my kids.
So now does the airport fall in District 6 then?
No, it's really weird. So it's a cutoff area near the airport, but I did grow up by the airport. So seeing how it's really innovated is very impressive. We've got United Airlines here. It's big.
Yeah. The airport's come a long way. I'm really excited to see what they do. You know, it kind of is disappointing that the pandemic shut everything down, but it's exciting that the trajectory they were heading on.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that it comes back. You know, I think that one thing my grandfather instilled in me is like, once you've had it once, you can get it again, even if you kind of, you know, scale back or fall back somewhat. Yeah. So I think we'll continue to be in the right direction. I would highly suggest that people continue to follow through with the CDC recommendations. We do know that COVID, the virus or the bacteria, doesn't like heat. So, you know, I'm sensing that we may see some lower numbering, but again, people need to still continue to follow the guidelines. And, you know, the hand washing and cleaning of the surfaces in your home is everything.
Yeah, because they're showing infection rates are starting to, that's where the home is where the infection rates are starting to occur more.
Right.
And I think we should be washing our hands and wiping things down anyway, you know? I mean, it's like, come on, everybody.
All the time. And remember that the bacteria or the virus and the bacteria lives on surfaces for 5 days. And so I'm always constantly, especially with little ones, just wipe it down, spray it down. We have spray bottles all over the house.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. So, so you're on the ballot for November, so that's super exciting.
Very exciting.
And now people who aren't in Stockton can't vote. And so does it work in Stockton that only your district would be able to vote for you, or can anybody in Stockton vote for you?
No, we're district wide voting only, so you do have to live in the district. However, share a post, like my page, get the word out, tell a friend, just, you know, universal, you know, you may know someone who knows someone.
Yeah. Well, I think your amazing work in the community and the city should speak for itself all on its own, but we all know that it doesn't necessarily always translate that way.
Right.
I'm sure you have an army of people behind you, and if I had a vote, I would vote for you. I think you're an amazing.
Thank you so much.
Oh yeah.
Thank you so much. You know, I'm really honored for the working class and the unions, in particular with the Longshoreman Union, because my grandfather was a longshoreman too, and so. It was so funny. I have to tell you the story because it's so funny to me. And because I used to tell my cousins, I said, you know, I always thought that we were rich. And they were like, why would you think that? Like, we only have 3 pairs of pants. I was like, you know what? Because we always ate good. And when you were talking about food being the staple of like family, it made me think of my grandfather, because we would get, you know, discounts on food, or we would buy it on the market. So I was going to San Francisco like at 5 years old, but I didn't realize like that was a privilege, like to be going to, you know, the Golden State. And we would go to the pier in Chinatown and we would buy like caviar, because my grandmother is or was from San Francisco. She's thus passed away. But we would buy red snapper, we would buy salmon, we would buy crab and lobster. But keep in mind that we got like the discounted rate. So when we came home and started to eat that, I felt like, hey, we must be rich. My cousin was like, how can you think that? We only have 3 pairs of pants and half the time the lights are off. But we ate good.
Well, there you go. A child's perspective. That's the way it is, right?
Right.
If you were rich, your grandfather was rich in his relationships.
Yes, and his soul, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we would do, so I think I'm gonna join your group, but we would also preserve apples and peaches, and fig jam is like one of my favorites.
Yes.
And when people hear me say I like fig jam, they're like, what? I'm like, I grew up on it. It was so good.
Well, and the next time I see you, I'll bring you some of my jams. I have a bunch of jams from my fruit trees, and they're just so delicious. My husband gets mad at me when I give them away, but we're about to have a new crop come, and we have a bunch of fruit on all our trees. So now's the time for me to stash this away, the ones that I'm going to give to people. So I'll make sure you get some.
Please do. And what a great opportunity to like maybe consider some of these senior homes. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah.
Some of their faces. I had one guy tell me, now, and he was probably about in his early 70s. He's calling me Miss Kimberly. I'm like, oh no, sir, you will not call me Miss Kimberly. But he was like, you guys are saving our lives. Like, they are so humble and so ready just for these deliveries, just to see our faces. And so again, let's make sure we protect our wealth of wisdom, which is our senior population, because they need it. They need that.
Yeah. And they deserve it. They've earned it. They got us all here. So
every bit of it.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for being on the show. And I want to just kind of wrap this up with you letting everybody know once again how they can get a hold of you if they needed to inquire about your services or wanted to have more information from you.
Perfect. So I'm really an open book, so I don't mind giving my number out. So it is 209-905-8809. I'm always available to bounce off ideas off of as well. I can be found on social media. I'm not hard to find. Basically, Kimberly Warmsley, or you can also contact me at Kimberly Warmsley's Therapeutic and Trauma Services, and/or Kimberly Warmsley LSW for Stockton City Council is another Facebook handle. And last but not least, you can reach me at kwtts.com. I'm an open book for many. Please follow my trauma page because I do write blogs and I talk a lot about mental health, what you can do. I provide resources to the community. I don't want to forget to mention the wealth of information that you can find on the Department of Veterans and Services Affairs. The National Association of Mental Health also has a wealth of information, which includes 24-hour warm lines that people can call if they feel overwhelmed or if they feel like they want to hurt themselves.
That's a great resource. Thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
And then to wrap it up, if you would like to see Kimberly more, she's live with Kimberly on the Voice of San Joaquin, and right now they're playing her reruns basically. But it's her shows are amazing.
Yeah, and just don't forget to like and share our Facebook page on the Voice of San Joaquin, because all our shows are you can type in Women of Wine Country and see what Terry's talking about, or Live with Kimberly show, our Tales and Tips with Dr. Julie Brown, my Emerge sister. Of which we're having a virtual house party this weekend. So if you have some time, pop through. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. So those are some other things that we can talk about next time. It's just really thinking outside the norms.
Yeah, I would love to have you back. I think that these are hours of discussion that we can talk about, and maybe we'll take one subject and just talk about that one subject, because I have a feeling we could do 20 shows just with you.
Seriously, seriously. Well, let me know, and I'll be looking forward to my jam as well.
Okay, sounds good. And
You have a good
thank you
one.
so thank you so much. And everybody watch for Kimberly if you're in Stockton, District 6. She's your girl. I'm telling you right now, she will be amazing. And I want to just thank everybody so much for tuning in, and watch for me next week. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.